$176 billion. That's how much General Motors was worth at its absolute peak. The most powerful car company ever built. More valuable than Google. More powerful than most governments. And on a random Tuesday morning in 2009, it was worth nothing. Not struggling, not in trouble. Nothing. Bankrupt. Gone. Dead. 100-year empire erased in a single morning. But here's what should genuinely disturb you. GM didn't go bankrupt because the world changed. They went bankrupt because they refused to let it. They had the warnings, they had the technology, they had every single opportunity to survive. They chose not to. This is Empire Dissected, and this is the story of how the greatest industrial empire America ever built decided to die on its own terms. Every week, I make videos on the rise and fall of corporate giants that ruled the world and had it all. If you are interested in that, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. To understand how GM fell, you have to understand what GM was. It wasn't just a car company, it was America's heartbeat. In 1908, William Durant founded General Motors with a wild idea. Instead of betting everything on one car, why not own all of them? Chevrolet, Cadillac, Buick, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, GMC. One company, every budget, every dream, every American. By the 1950s, General Motors wasn't just winning, it was lapping the competition. 1 in every 2 cars on American roads had a GM badge. They were so profitable, they literally didn't know what to do with the money. CEO Charles Wilson famously told Congress, and I want you to remember this line, "What is good for General Motors is good for the country." He actually said that. That's not arrogance, that's just math. Because at the time, he was right. But power does something to people, and it does something to companies. And somewhere in those gleaming, chrome-dipped boardrooms, something very quiet, very dangerous was brewing.
John DeLorean. In the 1960s and 70s, DeLorean was General Motors' golden boy. He was the youngest division head in GM history. He turned Pontiac from a grandma's car into a muscle car icon. He created the GTO, basically the car that invented the entire muscle car genre. But DeLorean had a problem. He kept telling the truth. Inside GM, DeLorean kept raising the same alarm over and over. We are building cars people don't want. We are ignoring fuel economy. We are optimizing for profit margins and calling it strategy. And one day, someone else is going to build what our customers actually need, and we will not recover. GM's response? They promoted him, isolated him, then quietly pushed him out. But here's the twist. GM didn't just ignore DeLorean's warnings. They had a secret internal report produced by their own engineers in 1971 that confirmed everything he was saying, word for word, number for number. The fuel economy of their vehicles was dangerously low. Japanese competitors were coming. American consumers were already shifting. GM buried the report, locked it away, shredded the copies, and went back to building the same cars. And that decision is the exact moment the company started dying. They just wouldn't feel it for another 38 years.
The 1970s hit GM like a freight train. The oil embargo, fuel prices tripling overnight. Suddenly, Americans didn't want giant gas-guzzling land barges. They wanted something small, efficient, reliable. Toyota and Honda dusted off their suits, ready to shine. They showed up at exactly the right moment with exactly the right cars. How did GM respond? By producing the Chevrolet Vega, a car so catastrophically unreliable that its aluminum engine literally dissolved itself. Consumer Reports called it one of the worst cars ever built. GM shipped millions of them. By 1980, GM's US market share had already dropped from 54% to 44%. But instead of fixing the product, GM did something that will define this entire era of the company. They hired consultants, and the consultants had a beautiful idea. Stop competing on quality, compete on finance. GM created GMAC, their financial arm, and started printing money by lending it to customers to buy cars they couldn't really afford. It worked. The numbers looked great. The boardroom was happy. The actual cars? They kept getting worse.
Here's something I bet you didn't know. In 1996, 13 years before their bankruptcy, General Motors built the world's first mass-produced electric vehicle, the EV1. It was fast, clean, and years ahead of anything on the road. People who drove it became obsessed with it. Waiting lists formed. Drivers wrote letters, held protests, begged GM to let them keep their cars. The EV1 had a cult following before that was even a thing, and GM had a monopoly on the future of transportation. So, what did General Motors do with this revolutionary, beloved, ahead-of-its-time electric car that could have defined the next century of transportation? They recalled every single one, forcibly, from people who were still driving them, from people who were actively begging to buy them outright. And then they crushed them, every single one. GM claimed the car wasn't profitable enough, that the battery technology wasn't ready, that consumer demand wasn't there. But internal memos, which later surfaced in lawsuits, told a different story. GM's oil company partners were nervous. Their dealership model, built on maintenance and repair revenue, was threatened by a car with almost no moving parts. And so, the EV1 died. Not because it failed, but because it worked too well. 9 years later, Tesla released the Roadster. 15 years after that, Tesla became the most valuable car company on the planet. General Motors had the technology, the engineers, the head start, the infrastructure. They had the future in their hands, and they crushed it. By 2008, GM was burning through $2 billion in cash every single month. Then, the financial crisis hit. Car sales collapsed overnight, credit dried up. GMAC, their financial lifeline, was drowning in subprime debt. GM went to Washington with their hand out. And Congress, on live television, made them answer for every single one of their decisions. The gas guzzlers, the ignored warnings, the EV1, the executive jets they flew to Washington in while begging for a bailout. Everything. Think about this. The CEO of General Motors flew to a poverty hearing in a private jet. On June 1st, 2009, after 101 years, General Motors filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The U.S. government bailed them out to the tune of $49.5 billion. 240 dealerships closed. 21,000 workers were cut. Brands like Pontiac and Saturn gone forever. The company that once told Congress it was synonymous with America had become a ward of the American taxpayer. General Motors had the warnings. They had the engineers. They had the technology. They made the right decisions, then buried them.
Based on an assumption that the U.S. market continues at about the current rate, which is weak level. We don't assume a lot of recovery. We hope it won't get worse. On that basis, we would, with the amount of funding that proportionally would presumably be allocated to us, we think we have a good shot to make it through next year.